Welcome to That Backyard Property Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Killiner, and I'm a father, a husband, and a mortgage broker. Our goal is to inspire, educate, and empower people through property. Whether you're a first home buyer, whether you're looking to upgrade or downsize or invest in property, then we're here to help you. Each week, we'll have a special guest that's an expert in their field, and they'll guide us through all of your questions that you might have, plus a lot of other information. So let's do this. Welcome back to another episode of The Backyard Property. Today we have Director and Wealth Advisor from Capital Partners, Kathryn Creasy.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Super fun.
It's so good to have you. It was funny when we were trying to work out who we should get early doors. Your name was one of the first that I could think of. And I think the reason is because your genuine care and passion for helping people is always evident.
Oh, that's sweet.
And I was like, who can we get that people would relate to, firstly, that would empower people to make financial decisions without getting too deep, because obviously we don't know people's circumstances. Yeah. But your name was one of the first I could think of.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's very nice. I guess that's a nice reputation to have.
It is. It's I don't know. There's always people you meet and you go, that person's who you want to hang around with, and you're certainly one of those. So, talk to me. What's the how's everything in the wealth advisory game?
Well, I tell you what, we have had. I mean, much like the property market, I suspect we have had a ripper market this year. Yeah. So. Things in the wealth management space have been really good. Capital Partners, obviously, like we are, even when the market's bad, we're still like doing well because we want to do well for our clients. But at our most recent conference for our professional association, I don't know if you saw this, we got awarded Practice of the Year, so for Australia, which was amazing. So things at Capital Partners are very good right now because the team is feeling very jazzed and pumped to have been acknowledged.
Oh, I did see it. I've seen a few. I've seen a few. It might be the algorithms, but I certainly look to Capital Partners as a business. The people in charge, yourself, but obviously David, Andrew as well. It's something that I would love to aspire to in terms of the culture that you've created. What's the secret ingredient?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe it starts with David being the secret ingredient. I think that over the years that Capital Partners has been in business, there's been a real focus on on succession of the business. And so, when I started there sort of 10 or 11 years ago, what David, Chris and Michael, who were the founders, were trying to do, like they had offers from other firms to buy them at like very extreme multiples. And I think they sat down and said, that's actually not going to be best for our clients. So we need to build the succession of the business within the business. Yeah. And if you want for the people who are in your business to buy into your business and stay there for 10 years, 20 years, etc., the culture has to be great. So there's always been a real focus on growth and development. And certainly over these last 5 or 6 years, we've gotten much more into how to have good relationships with each other and how to have healthy conversations. Yeah. Because I think a lot of the ways that we fall down as humans is like avoiding conflict or being really conflict-full. And so it's like learning that if you've had a bad interaction with someone, you can't go to them and say, you did this. You have to say, like, this was my experience. This is how I contributed to what went wrong. How can we do better in future? And I think that everyone, because we do so much work on that, is really open and honest with each other. And like, we're not always perfect, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But that sort of focus on helping everyone to be the best version of themselves, I think, is really helpful for our culture.
Very healthy culture. Yeah. You have an appreciation wall as well, right?
Oh, yeah, the appreciation. Yes, and that, I think that's really like testament to the team, right? So we have, the whiteboard in our team room is filled with sticky notes where people have just written like appreciation for each other. Thanks for helping me with this. thanks for always being there if I need to talk, et cetera, et cetera. And it is like you do get quite a little boost when you see that someone's like written you a note and seen you and appreciated you. And, the wall comes down every quarter and then we have to build it back up again, which is nice as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay there forever. It's like it's an effort to maintain that.
Absolutely. It almost reminds you a little bit of the end of primary school when you're writing notes to people to say, I like this person. It's you get a warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yes, it's very nice.
I just implemented it for us within our business, and we're calling it Fan Mail Friday.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so every Friday, and it's very open. It's very much fan mail for each other, and I love the look on someone's face when they get a compliment from someone within the team.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really happen that often. And we work so hard that you probably don't stop and reflect on what other people are doing to help you get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there is something to be said for when someone does something great and you think, geez, that was great, to make sure that you verbalise it completely.
Yeah, because we're all too critical of people and ourselves, and we're probably more willing to voice that than the good stuff.
Yeah, which is a bit rough.
We'll delve into capital partners a bit later, but I love going straight into the talking about people's first home and what a home means to them, and that could be whether it was childhood family home, whether it was your first property, something to do with home. What does that bring up for you in terms of memories?
Okay, well, let's talk about the first house I bought, which is the only house I've bought. I still live there. So I bought my house or home when I was 27, so I'm 42 now. Yeah. So I've been there for 15 years. And I don't think when I bought it that I thought that I would be there 15 years later. And I wasn't in the market to buy property at the time. I had been renting, and I was renting off my friend, and he decided that he was going to sell the house. And so I said, can I stay here while it's on the market? Yeah. And he was like, yes, please do that. And my parents had moved. I grew up in Sorrento. My parents had moved to Singapore. So my siblings were living in the house in Sorrento. And I basically was like, I'm in Doubleview. I either have to go back and move in with my siblings, which I didn't really want to do because I didn't want to go back to Sorrento, it being a bit far from the city, or I'm going to have to rent somewhere else and find someone to rent with. And, oh, God, it was back, this is how long ago it was. You didn't go on realestate.com.au.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think.
I was having breakfast with my girlfriend and we were looking at the ads in the paper. Yeah. And I was like, oh, there's this place in Wembley Downs and it doesn't look that expensive. Maybe on the way home from breakfast, we should just pop in. So we went and I walked in and instantly felt like, wow, this place is so nice. Like wooden floorboards, massive big bedrooms. I actually don't think I will forget the feeling of walking in and being like, wow, this is actually really lovely. I had no one to support me because my parents were living in Singapore. I rang a friend's dad who was a real estate agent and he talked me through it and was like, yep, that seems like a reasonable deal. Yeah. And so I did it all myself. And I look back on that and think, oh my God, I'm so proud of myself at 27 to have made that decision, done it all alone. I actually think maybe I took my mum might have been in Perth when I went to the final inspection. But other than that, all me.
That's amazing. Because it's quite rare for people to be able to have the ability to do that on their own.
Yes.
Without calling upon help.
Yeah. And particularly when I hadn't been looking, it was kind of a little bit of spur of the moment because I'd kind of been looking for a rental. Yeah. It was a lot at the time. And I remember I was working in a stockbroking firm and some of my colleagues were like, nah, you should be investing in the market. That's too much to spend on property. And I was kind of like, but I'm going to have to buy a house sometime. Yeah, I want to live somewhere. So yes, with the benefit of hindsight, it was one of the best decisions I've made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You mentioned that feeling of walking in for the first time and it being the one in a sense, because I know a lot of buyers that we're helping don't get that feeling. They're seeking or searching for that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're not always it's not always going to be that
Yeah.
easy or that. So maybe there was a little bit of luck in there as well.
There was so much luck. Like, I don't think I'd ever been to a home open before.
That's
So
so
I'm
good.
really sorry for all the people out there who are looking, because I know that it's hard.
Yeah.
And, like, rest assured now I am on the hunt for, because the house you want when you're 27 is not necessarily the house you want when you're 42. So I am on the hunt for something a bit more spacious. But, yeah, that was just pure luck.
Yeah.
And I think also, like, it was a risk, right? And, we can be so risk averse when it comes to these big decisions. And I get why. Like, I tend to be quite a risk averse person. I don't know. That feeling was lucky. But I also think that when people come into my house now, even though it's changed a lot since, 15 years ago, because I've done a lot of renovating, people still are like, oh, this has a really nice homely feel. So I guess maybe it's also the touches that you make. So when you walk into a house, you have to see that you can put your own touch on it, right?
Oh, absolutely. And as you said, it's a home.
Yeah.
There's just that homely feel to it.
Yeah.
It's property market certainly rewards people for taking action.
Yes. And I think sometimes, when we talk about investment in property, keeping the house that you first bought and then leveraging to buy your next house is often a strategy that people want. And I wonder sometimes whether that's the best strategy. Like, if we're investing in property, we should be a little bit agnostic to the property that we're buying, right? Like, you should be looking for the best investment, not just the house that you used to own or the house next door. But I feel so emotionally attached to this house. I don't think I could take my own advice. Yeah. Like, unless I absolutely need to, I'm not sure that I'm going to sell it to buy another house,
It's such a common thing, because a lot of those people in that demographic that are looking to upgrade, and it's the decision whether they sell or rent the property they're in. And it's probably not the best decision to keep it generally, because you ideally want to be paying down your new owner-occupied debt.
Completely, yeah.
And maybe that property wasn't or isn't still a good investment. And obviously there's a tax benefits to selling while you're still in there. So there's a lot to weigh up.
Yeah, there really is. And it, that's where the value, I guess, of getting advice comes in.
Yeah.
But I think also where we live is such an important part of your life.
Yeah.
And so you really have to decide whether you're going to give up perhaps the house that you could buy if you sold this house. Like, is it actually the right thing to do for your life? Because you can downsize in future.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as we're talking about that, I'm thinking about, the concept of, I think it's called rent vesting, right? Where you rent where you want to live, but you buy a good investment property. And I know people doing that in Sydney, and that actually seems like a really sound strategy in places like that. The problem with renting, obviously, is that you just don't have security of, Yeah,
and it's not like Europe where you can have a 10-year lease.
Oh my God, 80. Like, I've got a client who was telling me that their family has been in this same house for 80 years.
Yeah.
Like, that is so, so common in places like Germany. And maybe that's what we'll head towards.
Well, hopefully, because a 6-month, 12-month lease plus getting a rent inspection every 2 or 3 months it doesn't make you feel like it's your home.
No. And you don't feel as secure, and it does really push people into buying.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess when you touch on Sydney, renting in Bondi and paying $400 a week and being able to buy somewhere else does make sense from a lifestyle, but being able to be on the property market.
Yeah, and then knowing, obviously, well, not obviously, but potentially that's building to you towards the goal of actually then buying your house. But at least you're getting some capital growth that will enable you to enter the property market, to, buy the house you want to live in the future.
Hopefully. Obviously, Sydney's pretty tough when you're looking at a minimum $3 million for a house in some of those suburbs.
I know, that is so, and that's why, so many people moving out of Sydney. Like, it sounds a lot of Melbourne and Sydney-siders have gone up to Brisbane. Yeah. I mean, that's anecdotal, right? But you hear that.
Yeah, you definitely hear it. And obviously they've got the Olympics coming up and all that sort of stuff.
God, so exciting.
Yeah. And so what brought you into that wealth advisory space? Like, what was the initial foray into there?
Well, I've got a marketing degree. So I started in marketing. I had a family friend who offered me a role at at Hartley's in a stockbroking firm, working with him as his dealer's assistant. So I thought, I was ready to have a change from marketing after only 3 years. So I tried that, and, it was a really fun place to work, but stockbroking probably wasn't for me. So after about 8 years, I started looking for something else. And one of my friends introduced me to Capital Partners. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try financial planning. I wasn't so sure about it, and to be honest, I really didn't like it at first. Yeah. Like, the office was much quieter than stockbroking. It was much smaller. But what I saw really quickly is the impact that you can have on someone's life. And that is what I love about it. And the strategy, I really love, like, there's so many different ways that you can build something together for someone to get them to where they want to be. And that is really I love doing that.
How do you work that out?
Do you mean like what strategy we might use for someone?
More like, how do you work that out because there's so many different ways you could do it. Is it individual based? I'm guessing it is individual based, but like, how do you work through all of those different options? Because one option we're never going to know in hindsight, but one option is going to take them to this point in their life, and one option's over here. So
I think we always start with sort of like the end point in mind. So what actually are we trying to achieve? Because people will often come in and say, okay, I want to buy an investment property. And you're like, well, hang on. The investment property is the strategy, but what's the goal?
Yeah.
Like, the goal might be, I want to not have to work, right? And so then, okay, well, then it makes it like, is the investment property the right way to get you to a point where you don't have to work anymore? Yeah. So we start with the what actually are we planning for, and then we can sort of work back from there. And often I think we find where there's different strategies, we have to sit down with our clients and say, right, this is sort of the pros and cons of this way, and let's come to something that we're all comfortable with. Because often people who are high income earners will say, well, I want a negative gear. Like, I definitely want to get an investment property. I want to pay less tax. And you're like, great strategy, and you will pay less tax, but there's an added level of risk when debt is involved, right? There always is. And so do you need to take on that level of risk to get to where you want to be? And if you do need to take on that level of risk, well, then, like, maybe we go further down that track. If you don't need to take on that level of risk, like if you have enough savings to get you to retirement at age 55, which is what you're working towards, yes, you'll pay less tax, but is the risk worth it? And, and some people will say yes, because that means that there are more opportunities down the track, or that means they will leave more money for their kids or help their kids into the housing market. But for some people, it's a good reflection on, would I take on that extra risk if I don't need to?
Yeah. It must be quite powerful now, looking back over the journey with Capital Partners, because the people you helped initially, you've seen 10 years of growth and in them as people, because they've either had kids or they've retired. Like, all these things have happened in life over that journey. That must be fairly rewarding. Yeah,
it's very cool. There is definitely clients that have come in, particularly when they inherit money, and the sense of legacy and not screwing it up because their parents have given it to them is really strong. And getting them to a point where they feel like they can actually enjoy the money, but still honour their parents' legacy by sort of buying a house or something is very cool. And I do a lot of work with women who have been through divorce, and so often when they come in, it's from a point of I was involved in the day-to-day budget, that type of thing, but not in the structure of the finance and the family trust and the bucket company and what else might be part of the household assets. And to get them from a point of, I just don't necessarily understand all of this. I don't know how much I can afford to spend. I don't know how much I need to work. And I reckon it takes sort of 3 years, but to get them to that point 3 years hence, where they're then coming back in and explaining the investments back to me and saying, this is why I have this here and this is what this is for, and being really comfortable and confident with their cash flow. My goodness, it's so empowering to watch. And like, if I sometimes wish that I could like give them a crystal ball and show them themselves in 3 years' time, because you'll be through it and you'll be thriving. And like, yes, it's not the life that some people envisaged, right? No one goes into a relationship looking to break up. But gosh, you can feel like you can really take control and feel confidence. And I just love seeing it.
Absolutely agree with all of that. I get so much joy in watching that unfold from our perspective. I had a recent one. It settled 2 weeks ago. So separated from her partner quite a number of years ago, and was just so nervous. Renting was all she ever thought she was going to do. And so someone said, just meet with Michael. And so we met together, guided her through it, and then she made an offer, and she was shaking. And we made it together. So we're sitting there, and she was shaking. She was like, "This is such a big moment in my life." I was like, "But you can do it. Like, you can actually do it." And the look on her face when she clicked the button to send the offer, and I did it. I did it. And then offer got accepted, finance approved, settled, moved in on this Friday, and she was a teacher, so just before school holidays. Yeah. And
that gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, it gives me goosebumps every time she calls, because it starts off with, you have no idea how much this has changed my life.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, well, it's not saving lives, so there's different layers. There's different layers to this, but there's certainly an element to being involved in helping guide someone through changing their life.
Yeah.
And empowering the person to make that decision is pretty fulfilling.
That is what I love about you, because I think back to my experience and I had no idea. And my mortgage broker, I don't even remember his name. Like, he did nothing to help me. Yeah. And how wonderful for someone to know that there is a person on their side who will literally sit with them while they're putting in the offer. Like, that is very cool.
Yeah.
And the reward for you is amazing as well, because then you get to see someone's life change, right?
It completely changes.
Yeah.
Like, the whole thing, the whole world changes. And now there's this sense of pride, as you mentioned when you bought yours, and this sense of, well, what next? What can I do next? Yeah. And there's no longer this, I can't do this on my own. Yeah. And I really love that, because this is what I've found from my experience. It's generally the female from that separation that is the one that doesn't feel like they can then achieve it. Yeah. Whereas males seem to be much more simple and go, I can do this myself. Yeah. Whereas the females are like, I actually want someone along the journey with me. And so being part of that sounding board, it's special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Helping someone make good decisions, and then just knowing that it's giving them a jumping board for to thrive is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when there's kids involved and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you see, as you said, you help people that unfortunately have gone through a separation. What do you see, or what could you say for people that are in that part of, like, that's something they're going through right now, or they might be just about to go through? Is there something from a financial aspect that they could learn about or help educate themselves on?
Yeah, I think I guess it depends on what position that you're in, but often when people when there's been dual incomes or one income, people get sort of unsure about cash flow. So how, like, when this all ends and I have my half of the assets, how will I actually have cash flow? And so obviously, you know what you earn, but if you've reduced working hours for some reason, or you have a lower income than what your partner had, then there is a level of stress around that. So I think it is very important, and it's so boring, but to just be a little bit granular to understand what you're spending, because most people who come in as a starting point, they don't know what they spend. And, I can say it sounds as simple as downloading your bank statements, but that's actually not simple for everyone, right? Yeah. Because if you're not a person who works in a desk job, like if you're a PE teacher, you're not really working with like all of the well, you might be using spreadsheets, I'm not sure, but you're not sitting in front of a desk all day. So, the computer literacy is not the same. But get a friend to help you, download your bank statements and look through them and figure out how much you spend. And, there is so many budgeting tools. The ASIC's Money Smart website is very good for stuff like that.
Yeah. Completely agree.
So, go into that and just do the budget and put in what you're spending so that you know what cash flow that you need. And if the numbers don't add up, if what's going to be coming in is less than what's going to be going out, then look at where you could cut, and obviously that sucks. But if you kind of make some smart decisions early on and do the savings, it really will it's like the little things that will put you on the right trajectory over the longer term.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say to people who are separating is about the family home. So I think, and you might see this, it's super common that women want to keep the family home, particularly when there's kids involved, because they want to keep continuity for the kids. And, you have to take what I say with a grain of salt because I don't have kids. But I've seen a lot of people do this. And what I find is that what they need is you. It's not the house. They need someone who loves them. They need a stable environment. And if you are there for them, if you care enough about them to want to put yourself under financial stress to keep the home, then you're on the right path. But putting yourself under financial stress doesn't make you the best parent. So the house is not what is going to be the best thing for the kids necessarily. What is the best thing for them is ideally not having an acrimonious parents, but also you loving them and being able to be there for them and not stressing about being able to turn the lights on. So if it means that you have to downsize, you have to be kind to yourself. Do you know what I mean? Don't
Absolutely.
Put yourself under financial stress.
Yeah.
So the two big things I see is get a hold of your cash flow and just be realistic about the family home.
Yeah. Yeah, because as we touched on right at the start, it's your home. Like a home is a home where you are with your family, not necessarily
the bricks don't make it
a
home. Yeah. And, the kids, they will get used to what they will, kids can be really resilient. And I know that change is, really tough for everyone. But sometimes the house is just not the thing that you need. It's actually the love and time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. They're tough conversations.
Yeah.
They're really tough conversations. And it's try and be as empathetic as you can. But sometimes I've never been through that, and it's very difficult to put yourself in the shoes with everything going on.
Yeah. And the thing that I think about that is we need to talk about it and have the conversation. It doesn't mean that you are going to sell the family house, but going from a position of no, absolutely not, to considering it and actually weighing up how that will impact your life and then making the decision, I think is really good.
Yeah.
Rather than just saying it's a blanket no, let's actually think about it, look at the pros and cons. If you end up keeping it, then that is fine. But, think about it. Make sure that you've weighed it up.
Yeah, very live example because her offer got accepted yesterday. We've got clients that she's just done that. And they've sold the family home, downsizing. She's bought this beautiful little unit for her and her child. And the offer got accepted yesterday. And so we're trying to rush this through
before Christmas.
Not before Christmas, but before the school year starts. Next school year. Very live example. And the email, so excited. Yeah. This is mine. And it's really
because when
cool.
you've made the decision, it does. Yeah, I think it can be really empowering to know that it's yours and you did it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess if we digress away from separations, I brought it up. What else, in terms of financial literacy, because we don't learn a lot of this at school. We learn bits and pieces, but certainly not the depths that you probably need to. We're probably not mature enough at some points to absorb it. What are some things that just really good general financial literacy hacks that you have?
Hacks.
Well, hacks, I shouldn't have said hacks.
No.
But obviously spending less than you earn, all that sort of stuff. But what do you see?
I would love it if everyone came out of school understanding what superannuation was and just taking a tiny bit more interest in it. That would be great. And the power of compounding. So I think we learn the power of compounding when we're at school. but we don't actually harness it when we start working. And there's a guy in our office who bought a house this year, and he's been investing since before he was 18. And I think that he had gotten some money from his grandfather or something. And then when he started working, he started adding to it. So it was just an index fund, like a globally diversified Vanguard index fund. This is general. This is not advice, but like if you were looking that up, and he just added to it consistently. And by the time he came to buy a house at the age of 26 or 27, it was considerable. Like it was a couple of $100,000. Now, obviously, he had a little bit of help from someone, but the money that he had put in had substantially grown.
And he loves his new home as well.
And he loves his new home.
He loves it. If it's the same person, I think you're talking about, he loves his new home. So,
and I think it's one of those things where if we start saving when we're 20, and we put away $50 a week, say, and we invest it, we could have so there's this whole analogy: save between 20 and 40, save $50 a week, invest it.
Yeah.
Then once you're 40, you've probably got a whole lot of other expenses, so you can stop. By the time that you are 60, it's remained invested. You've got like $600,000. If you wait until you're 40 to start, you have to save 5 times as much. So you have to save $250 a week. And it just seems like, wow, the earlier we start, the less we have to do. And so just do a little bit. And if everyone could talk to their kids about that, or if you don't have the nous to invest yourself, put a little bit extra into your super, because it makes such a material difference over a long period of time.
That's amazing.
So what did I say? The power of compounding, understand something about superannuation. It would also be great if people understood the tax rates. And that, I don't know, we've got long enough to talk about this, but when people talk about negative gearing, right? That's great because it reduces your tax. I've had people say to me, now that my house is positively geared, I probably should sell it. And you're like, no, that's the dream.
Yeah.
That's when you're making more money from your house than what you're spending on outgoings. And yes, the tax is not as good, but surely you're paying tax when you're making money. That's not a bad thing.
Completely agree.
So just more understanding of some of those concepts. And then, you know what, if you budgeted from when you were a young age and just put some money away, you're really on the right track.
Yeah.
And that, the barefoot investor, some people will, hum and ha about some of the things that he says, but I reckon he's got some really good strategies for cash flow and getting on the same page with your partner about what you spend, what you earn, what you invest in. So if you could just follow some of those really simple principles, that's a start, right?
Because it's not sexy. Saving money and building wealth is generally not sexy. It's really small sacrifices that you make over a long period of time.
Completely. Yes, you are 100% correct. You could come and work with us.
So, I certainly went through a period of buying specky stocks, the excitement of what might happen, and it just doesn't. And then you just know that if you are putting money away constantly, it just works over time.
The thing about the specky stocks is you will have a big win and you'll dine out on that. This 20 bagger, it was amazing. But you don't take into account all the money you lost on all the other ones that weren't winners. And then the reality of it is that you probably just could have invested in an index fund. It would have been easier. It would have been less cost, and you would have probably made the same amount of money. Yeah. So I think if you're doing it yourself, the simple, disciplined savings and investing in something that's not sexy is kind of the way to go. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry, it's not that fun.
I know it's not that fun. The one thing that I come across quite regularly actually is around offset accounts and high interest savings accounts.
Oh my God, yes.
And obviously this is all completely general in nature. The idea around an offset account, because your interest rate at the moment, let's call it 6.2, and a high interest savings account is generally around 5 to 5.5. And you're essentially saving 6.2% by having money in your offset while earning interest at 5.5 but paying tax on the money that you've earned. And it's quite fascinating to see that people still err on this because they're making the money rather than saving the interest.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating.
That I actually find, I have found that wild, that even some of my friends have done that, and not understood that you are like generally better off having the money in the offset account. And geez, what a failing like of our school system. But people also who don't know what offset accounts are. So I don't know how to make that better, right? Like aside from school or the like banks.
I don't know, banks, brokers, obviously that's becoming more and more prominent over time. I think just general chat around the dinner table and not making it such a taboo topic is probably a good start.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, you know, like I guess people are really sensitive about talking about what they earn, but some of those financial concepts about like how we've got this loan and we've got an offset account and what's your interest rate so that you can find out if there is a better one to be had. I don't actually think there's anything bad about that.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Obviously, I hear some of the parents' discussions with their kids and think, oh, hang on, your information at the top isn't right. So there is a little bit of that misinformation. So I think there's also a lot of, because of how easy and accessible information is now, people get a bit lost in the rabbit hole of, I don't know, general offset accounts, redraw, all that sort of, all the jargon.
So that's the value of advice, right? Yeah. Like some people will naturally be working in industries that lend themselves to having that financial knowledge. But if you don't, then seeking out a mortgage broker like you who's actually going to hold their hand and explain it to them, or, if it's bigger stuff, a financial advisor, that pays for itself.
Yeah.
It really, when it comes to matters like that, having someone who makes sure that you're doing, like making the smart decisions, it can be invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just trying to think of where else in the financial space that people could get some. Is there anything else you can think of that would be good to know for somebody that your world is so big with what's out there, and I guess it's so difficult because you can't give any advice. But if someone wanted to seek you out, what would they do if someone wanted or needed a financial advisor or a wealth advisor?
Well, I think when it comes to any sort of professional advice, you need to find someone who you really feel like you can trust. So because you're going to be talking about money, you're going to be talking about what trade-offs you're prepared to accept. I think that you need to have a really good relationship with that person. So be clear about what it is that you're trying to achieve. And, if it's a financial advisor, they can help you to clarify what your goals are, what you're actually planning for. But in the absence of that, sit down yourself or with your partner and go, actually, what do I want my life to look like? What are the things that I need to plan for? And what are the resources that I have? So you can get your ducks in a row by looking at your bank statement, seeing what you spend, what your outgoings are, what your incomings are, all of any investment income you might be getting or your professional income. So, look at your whole position. And then if you do need help, seek out advice from someone who you feel that you can get a good rapport with, a good personal relationship, that you feel like you can pick up the phone and ask them a question and they'll be there for you.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. And there's kind of the last part that I wanted to touch on, which actually I get quite excited talking about because it's around how the pride you have in your work and the business. But I wanted to just quickly mention the story. So provided someone your details a little while ago. The text message that I got from her after meeting with you was so special around the just how comfortable she felt with you in that moment and the care that you showed. So firstly, I want to say thank you for that. I think you know the person. But then finishing off, what are some things that you're really proud of? Obviously, the property was one of them, but within your profession, because you do such amazing work for people that can have generational effects on them. not mentioning any names or any situations, but there's some things you're really proud of in what you've achieved.
Yep. So I'm proud of the client base that I have, in the sense that they're all lovely people. We don't work with people who we don't get along with. You know what I mean? So there's no one who you sort of well, I guess the story is every time I take one of my associates to a meeting and they haven't met the client before, almost without fail, they will walk out and say, they are so nice.
Yeah.
So they're people who we care about, we're interested in their lives, and they care about us. So I'm really proud to be able to work with with all of those people, because there's nothing better than being able to give an impact to people who you really actually like and would be, socially be friends with. Yeah. The next thing I am most proud of, and maybe this actually should come first, is our team. So I really love seeing our team grow and develop. And when we've had people come in, one of the ladies in our office was our receptionist, and she's now head of operations. And she's still so young, but so amazing. And to be able to see the growth in the team and now what they bring and put back to the business, it makes going to work a joy. Yeah. And, people say oh, we've got to get people back into the office, work from home. In our business, people work from home, but people like coming into the office because we like each other. Yeah. And we want to spend time together, and we want to get a coffee together in the morning. And I think that's something that everyone in our business would be proud of.
You've developed such an amazing culture within Capital Partners.
Yeah. And then I think more personally, I'm just really proud of my the life that I have. I have down days like everyone does, but so often I will think to myself, man, I am so happy. And I don't know that everyone gets the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the family I have, the friends that I can stay in touch with, and the job that I have. What a joy to be able to say, man, I'm so happy so often.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
I'd be so proud of that too.
Yeah.
That's such a wonderful way to finish a good chat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been lovely.
Thanks for coming. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of our community at That Backyard Property Podcast. We would love it if you could comment, or even share with a family member or a friend that might get something useful from today's episode. We can't wait to see you again next Tuesday.